Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excessive, exorbitant corporate CEO salaries and soaring prices for consumers are certainly problems, and they rarely get any attention in this committee. I've offered legislation to eliminate or reduce the tax subsidy for excessive corporate salaries. The committee's not interested. We see price increases in the pharmaceutical industry of 5,000% overnight, bankrupting families. The committee has been uninterested in dealing with this problem of soaring prices. But we have today's hearing, and it does address an important problem. There are families across America that are encountering major economic obstacles to helping their child get all of the education that that child is willing to work for. Many colleges and universities with spiked increases in tuition are part of the problem. And I think we need to look at our federal aid policies and consider that aspect of the problem. But I think much of the focus of today's hearing is misdirected. The basic reason that tuition is going up is not because the federal government is doing too much to help students, but because the states have been doing too little. We've seen a steady decline in state support for the 80% of college students that attend a public or state university. Some states like Texas have cut their support for public education, for higher education, even again this past year. And a report out in the last week identifies 11 states, that's the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, 11 states that are spending more on their prisons than they are spending on their higher education institutions. Within the last week, the University of Texas System Board of Regents gave approval for another increase in tuition for the next school year. And the Chancellor, William McRaven, said that the school needed the increase because of the decline in per-student state appropriations by the legislature over the last decade. So that's got us to where we are today. And because they've misdiagnosed what ails higher education and the families that want to get it, they're also applying the wrong remedies. And the Republican remedy is reflected in the Republican budget agreement this year. They proposed to solve this problem by cutting about $200 billion from higher education support. And while the final agreement is silent on how they do that, many of their members have been very vocal about how they would implement that $200 billion cut. Reduce or eliminate public service loan forgiveness that allows students to have the choice of serving their communities in underserved areas, in health care, in a variety of other areas. Shrink income-focused repayment plans. Freeze Pell Grants for 10 years while cutting $90 billion in funds for those grants alone. Those are the kind of remedies that the Republicans have been offering. The kind of remedy they've offered in the Senate is to block our efforts to reduce the cost, to let people who are overwhelmed with student debt do something about it by reducing interest rates. The change that was proposed there would save $2,000 per loan for an estimated 25 million borrowers nationwide. That's the kind of solution that we need. My efforts to make the American Opportunity Tax Credit permanent so our families could get at least $2,500 off their taxes blocked in this committee. If we want to focus on where federal dollars are being misdirected, we might focus more specifically on what are little more, in some cases, in mail-order diploma mills and the attempts of the Department of Education to do something about it. The President's general employment rule requires that these schools demonstrate that they're getting their students into some gainful employment. And yet some of the same people who want to cut student financial assistance are the folks that support siphoning off as much money as possible to these for-profit schools without looking to see whether they're actually producing results for the families and especially for many of our veterans who sign up in these programs. So I believe we need to do more to afford opportunity, the very kind of opportunity President Johnson had in mind when 50 years ago in San Marcos, Texas, he signed the Higher Education Authorization Act that's about to expire. but we need to do it in a more constructive way than is being done in today's hearing, and I yield back.